Speaky Tandapos, 9:47 on a Tuesday night. She and Dapos on the couch, scrolling her phone, legs tucked under her. Yuendapos, right 2 feet away, and Yuendapos, I've already asked if she and Apos okay 4 times today. You brought her coffee this morning. You texted Andquat, thinking about you Andquat, at lunch. You canceled plans with your friends because she seemed a little off, and right now, in this exact moment, she feels further away than she and Dapos ever felt. Why does this keep happening? Did Nandapos, I do everything right? Is Nandapos, this what she said she wanted? Am I not enough, or is this actually too much? Do I even know the difference anymore? Wait, Hirandapos is the part almost nobody says out loud. You did Nandapos lose her by loving her too little. You lost her rhythm by giving her too much, too fast, with nothing held back for yourself. You and Apos are not needy, you and Apos are not weak. You and Apos are not doing love wrong. Every person who has ever poured everything they had into someone else has stood exactly where you and Dapos are standing tonight. By the end of this video, you and Dapos will know exactly which one of these 7 patterns is quietly pushing her away, and more importantly, why it feels like love while you and Dapos redoing it. Latandapos, get into it. Most people believe that being present, attentive, and always available is what makes someone feel safe and loved. But the real truth is that safety is Nandapos, built by access, Itandapos, built by tension. A little bit of distance, a little bit of mystery, a little bit of Anquat. I have my own life too. Anquat, without that, closeness stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like gravity. Her nervous system is reading you before her mind even catches up. When you Andapos are always there, always reachable, always agreeable, some part of her brain quietly registers that Thirandapos, no version of you she has to reach for. And human beings don't Andapos, fall in love with things they don't Andapos, have to reach for. This is Nandapos, about playing games. Itandapos, not about ignoring her texts, or pretending you Andapos were busier than you are. Itandapos, about something much deeper. The difference between a man who has a life she gets to be part of, and a man whose entire life has quietly become her. And once you see this pattern, you and Apos will start noticing it everywhere in your relationship. Here in Apos, where it shows up first. Hirandapos is the part no one talks about. The vanishing self. Most people in relationships think devotion means disappearing into the other person, canceling plans, dropping hobbies, being ready the second she reaches out. But Hirandapos is what nobody explains. The more of yourself you erase to be available for her, the less of you there is left to actually want. Desire needs a person standing on their own 2 feet. It can Andapos, attached to an echo. Picture 2 versions of the same Friday night. In one, his phone buzzes with a group chat about poker night, and he silences it without even reading it, because she mentioned she might want to talk later. In the other, his phone buzzes, he glances at her, says Anquat, give me 20 minutes, I promise I Andapos am all yours after, Anquat, and actually goes. Same night. Same love. Completely different energy in the room. Something in her is quietly registering, Anquat, he has a whole world he Andapos, not the center of, and somehow that makes me want to be in it more. Anquat, the Tandapos, when your partner stops feeling like she Andapos, holding you up, and starts feeling like she gets to choose you, over and over, on purpose. And once your own life comes back into focus, the next shift becomes impossible to unsee. This is where it gets really interesting. The permission trap. Most people think checking in constantly, Anquat, are we okay, and quoted, I do something wrong, Anquat, just making sure you Andapos, we're not upset, Anquat, is a sign of emotional maturity and communication. But the deeper truth is that constant reassurance seeking quietly hands her the emotional steering wheel of the relationship. She starts to feel responsible for regulating your anxiety instead of simply enjoying your company. Think about the couple sitting at dinner, where he keeps asking, Anquat, you seem quiet. Are you mad at me? Anquat, 3 times before the appetizer even arrives, versus the one who notices she Andapos, quiet, reaches over, squeezes her hand once, and just lets the silence exist without needing to fix it. Her mind is quietly whispering, Anquat, I don't Andapos, have to manage him right now. I get to just be here. and when you stop needing constant proof that everything endopose, fine. She finally gets room to just feel what she feels. Instead of performing reassurance for your comfort, once she endopose, not managing your emotions anymore, something even bigger opens up between you. And this is the one most couples never figure out. The mirror problem. Most people believe agreeing with her, matching her opinions, and avoiding any friction is what keeps the peace and keeps her close. But hirandipos, what changes everything? A partner who never disagrees ISN and a safe partner. He and a blank space, she and a talking to. Attraction needs an edge. It needs to bump into another real person, not a reflection of her own preferences handed back to her. Picture the moment she says she thinks a mutual friend was out of line at dinner, and he immediately says, "Yeah, totally, I agree," even though he actually thought the friend had a point. Versus the version where he pauses, says, "Honestly, I saw it a little differently," and holds that thought gently instead of retreating from it. Not agreement for the sake of peace, not silence to avoid conflict, not molding yourself into whatever shape keeps the night calm, but two people who can disagree and still stay turned toward each other. The tandapose, the moment she starts feeling like shiandapos, is talking to an actual person again, not her own opinions in a deeper voice. And once you have a spine again, the next pattern becomes almost too obvious to miss. Hirandipos, the part almost nobody says out loud. The urgency reflex. Most people think responding instantly to every text, every call, every small crisis proves how much they care. But the deeper truth is that constant urgency teaches her nervous system that you have nothing else pulling at your attention, and nothing that pulls at a personandapos, as attention eventually stops feeling important to want. Emotional distance in a relationship, dos nandapos, usually arrive like a slammed door. It arrives like scar tissue, forming slowly, quietly, over 100 moments where nothing was actually wrong, but nothing was actually alive either. Think of the guy who replies to her text within 9 seconds every single time, phone face up on the table during dinner with friends, versus the guy whose phone stays face down in his pocket, who replies when he actually has something real to say, and hundapos, fully in the room hiandapos, actually in. She feels it before she can name it. The difference between someone reacting to her and someone choosing, in his own time, to turn toward her. And when you stop treating every ping like an emergency, she starts to feel the pull of your attention as something earned, not something automatic. That shift alone changes the way she experiences every single conversation you have after it. Read that again. The compliment flood. Most people think a constant stream of compliments. You endapos re so beautiful. You endapos so lucky. You endapos perfect keeps a woman feeling adored and secure. But hirandipos, what nobody explains, when admiration is unconditional and non-stop, it stops registering as information about her and starts feeling like background noise about you, about how much you need her to be everything. This is nandapos, a technique for withholding affection. This is nandapos, a trick to make her chase compliments. This is what it looks like when someone has learned to see a specific person instead of worshipping an idea of her. Speak picture. The difference between you endapos or perfect, I don't endapos, know what endapos do without you, said reflexively every single day, and the moment he notices the exact way she explains something complicated to her nephew with more patience than he endapos, ever seen from her, and says quietly don endapos. Think endapos, ever told you how much I respect the way your mind works, Something in her settles into that in a way the daily flood never touched, he actually sees me, not just the fact that I exist. The tandapos, when compliments stop feeling like currency and start feeling like truth, and that kind of specific attention is exactly what makes the next shift possible. This is where it gets really interesting, the conflict avoidance. Most people believe avoiding arguments at all costs is what keeps a relationship stable and safe, but the real truth underneath it is that a partner who disappears the moment tension shows up teaches her that difficult feelings and a post allowed here, and a woman who can andapose, bring her hard feelings into the room, will eventually stop bringing herself into it too. Your nervous system in a conflict works like a smoke detector. It cannot tell the difference between her raised voice and actual danger, so it sounds the alarm either way, and most people respond to that alarm by fleeing the room, emotionally or literally. Picture the fight about something small, dishes left in the sink again, where he goes quiet, agrees to everything just to end it, and leaves the room 10 minutes later feeling nothing was resolved. Now picture him staying seated, saying, I hear that this is Nandapos, really about the dishes. Tell me what Nandapos actually going on, and meaning it. Her brain quietly registers, he stayed. He did Nandapos run. I can bring him my mess, and he won't Nandapos disappear. And when you can stay in the room during discomfort instead of smoothing it over, the walls between you start to come down without either of you having to say a word. One shift left, and Itandapos, the one that ties every other one together, and Hirandapos, what changes everything, the future pacing habit. Most people, especially early on, think talking about the future constantly. When we move in together, when we get married, our kids will look just like you, shows commitment and builds excitement. But the deeper truth is that constantly living in a future that has Nandapos, been earned yet quietly tells her the present is Nandapos, enough on its own, that you need the fantasy of forever to make right now feel worth it. This is Nandapos, a checklist for restraint. This is Nandapos, a rule about what you Andapos allowed to talk about. This is what it looks like when someone has learned to actually live inside the relationship the Andapos in, instead of narrating the one the Andapos hoping for. Picture the third date where he Andapos already mentioning what their wedding might look like, versus the version of him Uandapos, simply present, asking about her day, laughing at something dumb, letting the moment be enough without needing to attach a 5-year plan to it. She feels the difference instantly, even if she can Andapos articulate it. One man is building a life with her, the other is building an idea and hoping she fits into it. Datandapos, when your presence stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like peace. Itandapos, 9:47 again. Same couch, same 2 feet of space, but this time you don't Andapos, ask if she Andapos, okay a 5th time. You pick up the book you Andapos been meaning to finish. A few minutes pass, and then, on her own, she puts her phone down, shifts closer, and rests her head on your shoulder, not because you pulled her there, but because there was finally room for her to come to you. This was never a checklist of things to withhold. Itandapos is an invitation to become someone whole enough that closeness feels like a choice again, for both of you. When you stop performing availability and start actually living your own life, you stop chasing connection and start becoming the kind of presence people naturally move toward. The love you're looking for doesn't show up when you disappear into someone else. It shows up the moment you become someone worth turning toward. If you recognize yourself in one of these more than the others, I'd genuinely like to know which one. Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever wondered what it actually looks like to rebuild that sense of self without losing the relationship in the process, that's exactly what the next video walks through. Whatever pattern you saw yourself in tonight, you're not too late to shift it. You just noticed it. That's where it always starts.